Hi guys, this is Karan Ratti again. Welcome back to my channel. And today in this video, I'm going to talk about the big lie of hyaluronic acid. And the biggest lie, I'm going to jump to the point, which is that hyaluronic acid penetrates the skin. This is the biggest myth. And here's why it does not. It's because the size of the hyaluronic acid molecule is so large that it just can't penetrate the skin. All right. So this is super important. When they talk about hyaluronic acid, it's touted as this miracle hydrator that can plump your skin and hydrate multiple layers deep. Some very large brands have actually said that it goes up to 10 layers deep. Now here's the thing: the skin generally has about 30 layers because every day one layer gets formed and the other layer gets pushed upwards. So from the base of the skin, where the stem cells are, also called the basal layer, one cell divides and the other cells get pushed upwards. So it takes 30 days for the cell at the bottom, which is it's a round cell, to come up, get flatter and flatter, die, and form this dead layer on the top. So the dead layer itself is generally about 10 layers. So if somebody says that we are using low molecular hyaluronic acid and it penetrates 10 layers deep, it's really not going deep into even the epidermis layer. It's just going and remaining in the surface of the skin. And that's exactly what hyaluronic acid does. It remains on the surface of the skin and only holds water there, provided there's already water that has been supplied to it. So not only is it not a good molecule that can penetrate into the skin, it cannot, but it's also not very hygroscopic, which means it doesn't attract water as effectively as other humectants can or other ingredients can. So both claims that it can penetrate very deeply and that it can attract water are not correct, okay? Yes, it can attract water, but very low amounts, not as good as some of the other humectants that are available in the market, like glycerin and urea, which are the gold standards when it comes to hydration. Now, before we understand why it can't penetrate, it's important to understand what the skin barrier is. The skin barrier is this dead layer of skin right on top of the surface. In fact, model of the skin right here, and this is the dead layer. It's very thin, right? And then this is the blue stuff that you see here is the epidermal layer, and then this is the dermis layer. All the color of your skin that you get, all the hydration that you need, you actually need it in the epidermal layer. Yes, you need it in the dermis layer, but there's only one molecule or couple of molecules that can penetrate into the dermis, and I'm going to tell you about those. Glycerin is one, urea is another, sodium lactate is another, and then there are various others as well. I'm going to touch on them later in this video. Hyaluronic acid just sits on the top of the surface. Now, this dead layer that you see, this is what is called the skin's natural barrier. So the skin's natural barrier is actually composed of dead cells that are stacked together side by side and sometimes even overlapping cells. And these cells are joined together through what we call corneodesmosomes. Corneodesmosomes, imagine the cells being bricks. And in Hindi we call it saria, or in English we call it T-bar. This T-bar is, what connects these two cells together. And then in the middle, the cement is the lipid layer, which consists of ceramides, cholesterol, and free fatty acids. These form the brick and mortar system, which makes this dead layer. Now, the space between these two cells is what allows ingredients to penetrate inside. Now, if the ingredient is too big, then it cannot penetrate through this very small window or very small opening. The science that brands will never tell you is the 500 Dalton Rule. A landmark study was done in 2000s, which showed that the pore size, which is the space between these two cells, is about 500 Daltons in size. Daltons is the measure of the size of a molecule. Just like we measure a table in centimeters or inches, or distance between two cities in kilometers or miles, in the same way we measure the size of the molecule in Daltons, which is the molecular weight of the molecule. The minimum hyaluronic acid weight that you get in the market is 5,000 Daltons. That's 10 times bigger than the pore size. So how can that molecule penetrate? It just can't. And you have to understand that it's very difficult, almost impossible, to find any product that has hyaluronic acid as a single molecule. Even the single molecule of hyaluronic acid is at least 1,000 Daltons. But you don't get 1,000 Daltons because hyaluronic acid exists as a polymer, means multiple hyaluronic acids joined together as a chain, which is why the minimum size that you can get is about 5,000 Daltons ready to use in skincare products. But 5,000 to 20,000 Daltons is so expensive that most products that have hyaluronic acid with a low cost, let's say the product is cheap, but it says if it has hyaluronic acid, that hyaluronic acid is most likely a very large molecule, means 100,000 Daltons or more in size. 100,000 Daltons is, I don't know how many folds bigger. It's huge because the lower the molecular weight, the higher the cost of the ingredient, and brands cannot afford to put very low molecular weight in their products. Even if they do, it's going to be in such tiny quantities that it's almost useless. So with that, now I've cleared to you that hyaluronic acid is such a large molecule that it cannot penetrate. So it'll only sit at the surface of the skin, and if at all, make the surface of skin slightly smoother. It might appear a little wet because hyaluronic acid, when hydrated, is very sticky. And so it's good if you're, let's say, if you want something for, better makeup adhesion, meaning you want something that allows your makeup to stick better, then you can use a hyaluronic acid serum because it's sticky, it'll sit at the surface. But if you want hydration, then hyaluronic acid is not the right molecule. The other thing that you need to know is hygroscopicity. Hygroscopicity is the ability of a molecule to attract water. Now, here I'm showing you a video where you can see there are two beakers, and in one beaker, we've put pure calcium chloride. Calcium chloride is one of the most hygroscopic salts available in the market. It cannot be applied on skin, but this video is just to show you what water attraction looks like. In the other beaker, we have pure water. You will see that the water starts evaporating over time, but calcium chloride attracts water from the surface, from the atmosphere, and then it increases the amount of water inside and dissolves completely. Just see how quickly calcium chloride is able to take water from the humidity in the air and then saturate itself completely, almost to the point the beaker is half full. Whereas on the other hand, water is completely evaporated. So if you have a salt like calcium chloride in your skincare ingredients, that is going to penetrate deeply and capture water. But calcium chloride cannot be used because it's harmful for the skin. Instead, the next best molecule is urea or glycerin. Urea and glycerin can penetrate very deeply into the skin. Now, here's a research that I'm showing you where they've done Raman spectroscopy, a method to detect how deep a molecule can go into the skin. Within this study, they've established this method as a plausible or valid method to detect how deep a molecule goes into the skin. And you'll see glycerin as completely saturated. Whereas if you see a high molecular weight hyaluronic acid, it's just sitting on the surface. So this conclusively and definitively shows that glycerin can penetrate very deeply into the skin. And glycerin, because it's hygroscopic, it will attract water. Now, all you need to do for deep hydration is to make sure that the water remains in place, which is why most creams have oils in them that can form a layer on top that prevents water loss. So once glycerin has gone inside the skin and it has captured water, the oil is going to prevent that water from being lost. And instead, glycerin is going to take water from inside the skin and saturate the epidermal layer and even the dermal layer because it's so small that it can penetrate very deeply. That is why glycerin penetrates. So this is a strategy that most brands use. Now, if you have a serum which doesn't have any oil, just has glycerin or just has hyaluronic acid, it's not going to work. Even though glycerin is going to penetrate into the skin, there's no oil to prevent that loss of water. Now, there is a strategy to actually allow water to retain in the skin without the use of too much oil. And that is a technology that is called HydraFlux. And I'm going to talk about that a little later. But I hope now I've clarified to you that hyaluronic acid is too big a molecule, regardless of what you do, to penetrate in the skin. How do brands then get away with adding hyaluronic acid inside? Well, apart from marketing stuff that it's very trendy, a lot of people want hyaluronic acid. They feel it's a juicy ingredient that's going to hydrate the skin. So brands also want to catch on to the trend. And then they launch products with hyaluronic acid inside. Some brands are going to add what is called penetration enhancers. These penetration enhancers are emulsifiers called polysorbates or various other types of emulsifiers, polyethylene glycols, sometimes even alcohol up to 5%. In a lot of international brands, you're going to find alcohol written there, denatured alcohol. These are techniques designed to disrupt this barrier, remove the cement in the middle, increase the pore size so that more ingredients can penetrate faster. The problem is, regardless of how much you disrupt the barrier, it can still not increase from 500 Daltons to say 10,000 Daltons. It can increase up to 1,000 Daltons, means double in size. So if you have a molecule that is 1,000 Daltons, it can probably penetrate with penetration enhancers. But a molecule that's 5,000 Daltons in size, 10,000 Daltons in size, regardless of what penetration enhancers you use, it cannot penetrate into the skin. And the other thing which is wrong with penetration enhancers is that they disrupt the barrier. Once you disrupt the barrier, then the skin sensitivity goes up because the natural protective layer, you've disrupted it. It's broken from places. And so now you're going to have skin sensitivity, you're going to have breakouts, you're going to have redness, irritation, acne, and you will actually experience sensitivity to other ingredients. Otherwise, your skin would not have been sensitive to because they would have passively, easily, naturally diffused into the skin. Now with penetration enhancers, we've increased that speed. And if you immediately load the skin with a lot of ingredients, then the skin's going to react. It's going to start purging, and you're going to have all of these skin sensitivity issues. There are two penetration enhancers that I specifically want to talk about that actually cause the maximum disruption of the barrier. And they're so widely used now in skincare products. So you actually want to check the packaging and see if these two ingredients are present. One is dimethyl isosorbide, and the other is diethylene glycol monoethyl ether, also called transcutol P. Now, if you have these two ingredients, they're okay if let's say you have an ointment or a skin cream where the molecule is very large and you want penetration, but under the advisement of a dermatologist, you're using those products, it's fine. But these two ingredients are now being used in almost every serum that I see out there, because they somehow brands feel that they want to enhance the penetration of ingredients. In my experience as a skin scientist, as somebody who's formulated products for a living, I've started multiple brands. I can tell you that if you just allow the products to sit on the surface, they will passively diffuse over time. And since you're using the product every day, over time, your skin will still get those ingredients. They will still penetrate inside. You don't want them to penetrate so far deeply so quickly. And once the molecule has actually crossed this barrier, it will naturally diffuse inside the skin and it will reach where it has to reach. There's no need to accelerate that and then compromise skin integrity and then basically decrease the safety of the product. So penetration enhancers, even with penetration enhancers, you cannot get the level of penetration you need for hyaluronic acid. In fact, even peptides, which is this big, it's the biggest trend right now. Peptides for anti-aging, peptides for, skin regeneration. Peptides, also protein molecules, they're so large in size, just like hyaluronic acid, they cannot penetrate into the skin. There's minimal penetration. And if you can get close to the 500 Dalton size, then perhaps you can penetrate peptides, but there are very few peptides that are actually so small, at least not the ones that are working. So why is it that there are so many studies that show that both hyaluronic acid and peptides really work? It's because they're done on single cell lines, which means there's no natural skin available. They're just done on, individual cells. No ingredient can just go onto individual cells. You have the skin barrier to protect your skin, so it's not going to work in real life. The other thing is that even if these studies are done in vivo, which means they're actually done on clinical trials, they've been applied on the skin, you don't know what's going on with the barrier. Does the person have a compromised barrier? Is it possible that the conditions are such that there are false positives, means a placebo effect? You don't know all of these things. There's not a lot of data that supports this penetration of hyaluronic acid or even peptides and them even functioning. And you really need to go into the details of the research to actually find out whether it's accurate. And for just that reason, I have a research with me right here. You remember how I showed you those two penetration of glycerine and high molecular weight? That's shown in this research. This research paper is an example done by S.N. Dowby and others, where they have used human skin and shown the penetration of hyaluronic acid using Raman spectroscopy. This research, if brands and their R&D teams just read the title, they read the abstract, and they read the results, they will see that even molecular weights of 20,000 Daltons of hyaluronic acid can penetrate deep into the skin. But if you go into the details, I'm not going to waste your time with too much details, but I'll tell you what I found when you read this study and you realize that there are a lot of gaps in the data, which makes the results incredible, right? Or at least not fully trustworthy. Why is that? Because one, they used skin that has been taken out from somebody else, frozen, transported to the labs, unfrozen, and then they applied hyaluronic acid on top. The moment you freeze the skin barrier gets disrupted. It's not live skin, it's not fresh skin. They haven't done any test to figure out whether the barrier is intact. There is no mention of a technique called TEER, which is also called transepithelial electrical resistance. They should have done that in-house to check whether the live skin sample, the TEER at that point and the TEER after unfreezing it in their own lab, whether they're same. If they're not the same, that means the barrier has been compromised. The pore size has become very large because the skin is broken due to freezing and then unfreezing skin. So that can actually make even the largest molecules penetrate into skin. But in real life, that's not going to happen. Second, they've not done any comparison with fresh skin and this frozen skin that they received. Fresh skin has a completely different electrical impedance, which means it had very different electrical resistance. In live skin, the barrier is much better, and so it's going to prevent the penetration of very large molecules. The other thing is they've only done this on a single donor. I have not seen anywhere in this research that they've used multiple donors. Even when we do clinical trials, we actually do it on 30 people, 50 people, 200 people in large clinical trials, because it's possible that one person's skin responds differently. But on average, when we look at 200 different skin types, we can actually find that there is some level of coherence, meaning that most skin responds in a certain way. And so that's going to be your answer to whether something works or not. But if you're just doing it on one skin, you don't know how that skin is. You don't know what products that person applied. You don't know if that person had very dry skin and now they've just put a moisturizer and suddenly that skin became okay. So there are a lot of gaps. You need to do this on multiple donors and you need to repeat the test multiple times to actually see whether it's working or not. The other thing is they simply wiped the hyaluronic acid on top of the surface. Simply wiping hyaluronic acid on top of the surface after putting it there for 8 hours and seeing how it penetrates in the skin is not sufficient, because hyaluronic acid is still going to penetrate the dead layer of the skin. And if the skin is already compromised, like I already mentioned to you, then it's going to continue to penetrate inside the skin. And the last but the biggest issue with this research is something called mechanical artifacts from tissue sectioning. When they put hyaluronic acid on the skin, after 8 hours, they froze the skin at minus 20 degrees Celsius. Again, they shouldn't have done that. They should have cryo-frozen the skin at minus 190 degrees Celsius so that there's no crystal formation and the skin doesn't break. But they did it at minus 20 degrees Celsius, and then they cut the skin to actually see the cross-section. While cutting, the blade is going to drag the hyaluronic acid down to the deeper layers. And then when you use Raman spectroscopy to see whether it's penetrated into deeper layers or not, you will see a false positive, which means you will see the signal being sent showing that it's there in the deep dermis, but it's gotten there because of dragging from the blade that they've used to cut the skin and visualize the cross-section. So this is one of the biggest issues that actually happens in research, especially when you're working with skin. A much better technique for these guys would have been to use in vivo Raman spectroscopy to visualize whether hyaluronic acid is penetrating into skin or not. Now, I'm not questioning the research because the research is just showing that Raman spectroscopy as a tool can be used to visualize things inside the skin, which this research definitively shows. But because they use hyaluronic acid as a molecule to detect its penetration into the skin, any regular brand that doesn't have very good researchers who know core biology sitting on the top making R&D decisions, they're going to simply read the results and they're going to say, oh, this research shows that hyaluronic acid is penetrating in the skin. I'm going to use 20,000 to 50,000 Dalton's hyaluronic acid in my skincare products, and then I'm going to market it as this miracle hydrating ingredient that can penetrate into the skin. And I have the research to back it up. So if somebody ever challenges me, I can just show them the research. But the devil is in the details. I, as a skin scientist, can read this paper and I can understand the methods that they use that have a very high possibility of showing you false positives, which means this study cannot be relied upon in its own to determine whether or not hyaluronic acid can penetrate into the skin. So, which is why it's so important that you have somebody making products who is a skin scientist, who has studied cell biology, who knows skin regeneration and can understand how these things work and can read research papers well to determine whether they're accurate or not. Yes, there are other studies as well, but then the 500 Dalton rules is a very strong rule, and regardless of research, any molecule that is above 500 Daltons in size finds it very difficult to penetrate into skin, and hyaluronic acid is just too large a molecule. Imagine trying to push a big sofa through a small window. You cannot. The window is just too small. The sofa is not going to go through. Now, if your barrier integrity is disturbed, then it's possible that the window and the wall surrounding the window might have cracks. But regardless of the cracks, you can still push through a slightly larger thing through, but you cannot push through a sofa regardless of the cracks. So I hope now that I've been able to clear to you why hyaluronic acid is a big myth as far as its hydrating properties and as far as its penetration is concerned. So what molecules or what ingredients can you actually use to get very good hydration? Well, the best molecules to use are urea and glycerin. They have very strong hygroscopicity. They're very small in size. They can penetrate through and they can give you very good hydration. But you need to have a moisturizer that you apply on top afterwards, or the serum or the cream that has glycerin and urea already has oil in it that can prevent loss of water. Some of the other ingredients that you can use are sodium PCA, sorbitol, propylene glycol, propane diol. You can also use betaine, panthenol. These are all really great ingredients that you can use. Now, I'm about to tell you something very special. There's a strategy to actually capturing water inside, and that is this technology called HydraFlux that we are using in our pigmentation control night cream as well as our best-selling dark circle under eye cream called Lumini. HydraFlux uses the synergistic combination of 3 molecules: cross-linked hyaluronic acid, xylitol derivatives. Xylitol is a sugar. You've probably seen xylitol in chewing gums, and glycerin. Now, what happens is cross-linked hyaluronic acid is an infinite molecular weight hyaluronic acid. It is so large that it can capture water within itself and it can prevent it from being lost or evaporated. When you put saturated cross-linked hyaluronic acid on the skin, the water can actually penetrate into skin slowly and steadily over the next 5, 10 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour. This water that is penetrated into the skin, the glycerin is going to capture that, take it very deep, and then the natural sugar, which is xylitol and its derivatives, are going to then hold that water in the deep layers of the skin. And this strategy can actually hydrate your skin very strongly and can increase the natural differentiation or the natural structure of your skin. It can increase internal hyaluronic acid. It can increase internal ceramides, even fatty acids, and differentiation markers or proteins that form the natural moisturizing factors of your skin. So by using this strategy or by using HydraFlux in the skincare product, you can actually achieve internal hydration and better exfoliation of the skin, which is natural without the use of hydroxy acids or without the use of any mechanical exfoliating agents. So it maintains the barrier integrity of the skin. You get smooth glowing skin, which is naturally exfoliated. So this is exactly what we use when we are formulating our products, especially the night cream and the lube and eye cream. So there are these kind of strategies also that can be used. But the point is that hyaluronic acid is not as good as some of these other techniques that we use. So now that you know the truth behind hyaluronic acid, what's the best way to figure out what you need to use? One, don't hide behind ingredients. Just because a brand has put out an ingredient that it has niacinamide, it has panthenol, it has zinc, it has kojic acid, you have to realize, what are you even using the products for? If you're using the products for hydration, then the product should say increases hydration. If you're using the product to get rid of pigmentation, the product should say it's designed as an anti-pigment product. If you're using a product for anti-wrinkles or open pores, it should mention the problem on top. So try and find problem-solving products that have the problem written right at the top, so that you can test it for the next 30 days, because it takes 30 days for the skin to form and for you to see the results of day one after 30 days and see if it actually works for you. Just hiding behind ingredients is going to make you use 20 different products and then you're just playing chemistry on your face. Or if you hide behind ingredients like, oh, it has flower extract, or it has neem, or it has, whatever other ingredient, a natural ingredient, that's again hiding behind the ingredients. At the end of the day, they are chemicals, whether it's natural or whether it's artificial, and it's chemistry. It's best to look at problem-solving products. You can even go to your dermatologist, and dermatologists also know really well what products can work, because they're clinicians. They see people coming in every day and they can help you get closer to your skincare goals. But even if you're not showing your skin to a dermatologist and you buy problem-solving products that mention the problem on top, you are at least better off when it comes to trying to see whether you can get closer to your skincare goals or not, instead of hiding behind ingredients. So with all that, now you know better. I'm Karan Ratti. Hit the like and subscribe button. Don't forget to share this with people who are fans of hyaluronic acid, who you know are going to be mind blown with the kind of expose that I've done about hyaluronic acid over here. And comment in the comment section. Ask me questions about hyaluronic acid, whatever else you've been using. Tell me what your skincare regime is today, and I'm going to try my best to answer in the comments itself. Or I'm going to make a separate video if I get a lot of comments around a central theme. And read that description for other links to my other videos where I talk about why vitamin C is destroying your skin and why sunscreens don't work, and various other videos that I've launched. So with that, take care. Bye.